When a player defines so much of your offense like Giannis for the Bucks, it's inevitable that the opposition will have to do something to stop him. The Giannis Wall came into effect over 2 years ago now and worked without question, but it was only a matter of time before one of the NBA's most athletic players overcame it with some smarts, determination, and a little help from his friends. Here's why the Giannis Wall doesn't work anymore. Be sure to click the subscribe button and check out the links in the description for more latest Hoops content.
Jordan rules. Is that something you guys made up?
Back in the late 80s, the Jordan rules were a successful strategy implemented against the greatest player of all time by the Detroit Pistons. Created by Isaiah Thomas, they were put in place to work defensively against an incredible Michael Jordan who could do almost anything. The idea was to throw him off his game, thus ensuring that Chicago's best player couldn't be as effective.
When he comes to the basket, he ain't gonna dunk. We're gonna hit you, and you're gonna be on the ground.
30 years later, and the Toronto Raptors dug into the history books as they found themselves down 2-0 to the Bucks with an emerging MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, tearing them apart and scoring at will. New coach Nick Nurse decided to create his own Giannis rules by building a wall placing 3 or 4 players in the lane, thus stopping all of Giannis's momentum, making his famous Euro step a lot less penetrative. The Raptors were a long defensive side who could effectively implement this type of defense. They were focused on not only narrowing Giannis's drive, but also building a half-court wall and adding a player to double in transition. Giannis was then forced to shoot or kick out, both of which caused a number of issues because A, Giannis at the rim is their highest percentage shot being taken away, and B, Toronto's defense was quick enough to smother any form of space available for the next man to get a shot off. Essentially, the Raptors had reduced the Bucks to their lowest percentage shots. Which sounds pretty basic, but sometimes the most effective solutions are the most obvious. Another key factor was the obvious lack of form by Bucks' second scorer, Eric Bledsoe, whose three-point percentage plummeted from regular season's 32.9 to playoff 23.6%, or Middleton was inconsistent, so the option was to stay the course and take on the defense himself. What ensued was a complete turnaround in form as Giannis was reduced to just 12 points in Game 3. Frustrated in overtime, Giannis was fouled out and had to sit on the sidelines and watch the Bucks fall to the Raptors 118-112. This turned the tide as the Raptors defense had finally figured him out, and ultimately the Raptors went on to win the next 3 games in a row. While the wall did its job, we can't forget the two-way heroics of one of the top 5 players in the NBA, Kawhi Leonard, who essentially took it upon himself to guard Antetokounmpo following the first 2 losses. Steals, blocks, and breaks became the norm as an exclamation mark was placed on the entire series with a Lowry steal from Middleton, a fast break, and monster Kawhi dunk over Giannis to shake the Scotiabank Arena and knock the wind out of the Bucks for good. Following a disappointing end to the year that showed so much promise, the Bucks went all in yet again on their new MVP. As for the most part of the 2019-2020 season, Mike Budenholzer stood firm on his strategy knowing Giannis would improve. In a shortened season, the Bucks came out with yet again the best record in the NBA, and although questions about their playoff toughness lingered, they were still deemed favorites by many to move on to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1974, in a finals which saw them lose narrowly in a 7-game series to the Boston Celtics. However, in the postseason, a team with defensive legend Andre Iguodala and new defensive talent Bam Adebayo found a way to once again slow Giannis down. Bam had been statistically the most effective defensive player against Giannis in the regular season, and Iggy is a Finals MVP that took LeBron off his game back in the 2015 Finals, so the combination worked perfectly. The shock loss to the Heat in the conference semifinals showed weakness in not only the Bucks' ability to score, but their defense itself as they were exploited by Spoelstra's bolstered pick-and-roll game and the versatility of his bigs such as Bam Adebayo and Kelly Olynyk. With Giannis rolling his ankle at some point in the contest, it was tough to see the Bucks muster up any form of comeback as they fell 3-0 down immediately. Eventually, they succumbed to the Heat's energy backed by a ferocious Jimmy Butler as Giannis's Bucks bowed out in 5. Giannis appeared to be at a loss coming into the next season, again being named regular season MVP, but no playoff success. It looked almost inevitable that he would move on in free agency. Instead, Giannis opted to stay and fight it out for a title, signing a 5-year, $228 million contract as a statement of intent. The Bucks finished 3rd in the Eastern Conference with a modest 46-26 record. This was a good outlook for Milwaukee fans as it reduced their expectations, but at the same time meant less pressure on the team going into the postseason. With most teams assuming the template was set on how to stop him from scoring, the Bucks were no longer favorites. Kevin Durant's Brooklyn Nets were storming the East, and over in the West, new stars emerged such as Devin Booker for a superbly well-put-together Phoenix Suns. But Coach Bud stayed strong, and with the acquisition of Drew Holiday, whose 50% field goal percentage gave the Bucks another option in attack, and the revitalization of Chris Middleton, who flexed his field goal percentage in the playoffs, Milwaukee at least seemed set up for their best effort yet. What no one expected was for the original pattern marked out by the 2019 champions to be ripped to shreds as Giannis upped his playoff points per game by almost 5 from previous seasons to 30.2. The thing about the 2019 Raptors team is that they had a perfect storm on defense. Excluding back-to-back NBA Defensive Player of the Year Kawhi Leonard, Marc Gasol was also a former NBA Defensive Player of the Year. His post defense with size has caused significant trouble for opposition offense over the years. His efficiency at slowing down drives is immense, and at the time he joined the Raptors, he was probably nearing another late peak in his career. Another piece to the majestic defensive puzzle was Serge Ibaka, who is a two-time NBA blocks leader. Ibaka, known for his rim protection, caused havoc for any elite bigs looking to make a play in the paint. These three players, combined with the impeccable effort of other underrated defenders such as Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry, had a major effect on shutting down the Bucks' key component to their offense. In the lead-up to the Bucks' championship run, they played Miami, who simply couldn't get their offense going. Bam didn't quite have the same defensive influence as he was getting left behind at the rim by a far superior Giannis who entered the lane with ease. They then had a close series with the Nets, who realistically were an offense-focused team who lost their best offensive players due to injury. An Eastern Conference Finals matchup with the Atlanta side, whose primary defensive player was Clint Capella, no match for Giannis, who simply doubled down, slicing to the rim effortlessly. Which leads us to the finals, against an upbeat Phoenix Suns, following their somewhat more difficult journey through the West. The Suns overcame a big Lakers team boasting LeBron James and AD. Unfortunately, AD got injured, but the Suns seemed to have it figured out regardless, as they went on to march through the Denver Nuggets and a Kawhi-less LA Clippers. With all the momentum, it looked set to be another disappointment for Milwaukee, as Phoenix opened the finals with a 2-0 lead. But something changed to spark a turnaround, much like the Raptors' defense from 2019, which propelled them past the Bucks from a 2-0 deficit. Instead, the Bucks tripled down on their offense because their upgrade in Holiday could shoot, and Middleton seemed ready for the cause. Not only that, but a wall was no longer going to work on Giannis, as 23-year-old rim protector DeAndre Ayton simply wasn't enough to slow down Antetokounmpo's drives. Instead, it was Giannis who was creating his own defining defensive moments with a magnificent block on young Ayton at 2-1 down in Game 4 that set the tone for the rest of the series.
Now Booker with Tucker on him. Throws it up for Ayton. Shot blocked by Antetokounmpo.
Coach Bud was right. Giannis had improved. In fact, he had improved so much that he'd figured out how to break down the so-called wall himself. He was making smarter passes, targeting the weaker defenders, and overall just making better plays. The primary defender just couldn't lock him up like any of the three NBA defensive powerhouses the Raptors had in 2019. The ultimate answer likely came in practice when Coach Bud and Giannis focused on the template against the template, working out what Giannis and his secondary guys do when the opposition builds a wall and Giannis has to pass. With Giannis's development and the team's consistent enhancement in this part of their game, the Bucks went back to the regular old unstoppable force we had seen in previous regular seasons. In conclusion, the Giannis rules lasted probably the same amount of time as the Jordan rules. Not very long, and we all know what came next for Jordan. The wall forced Giannis to be a better passer, thus giving the league a much more worrisome prospect. Someone who can dunk and pass. And then what happens when you try to take something else away? He could easily be forced to become a better shooter. Then we're in real trouble. No matter the scheme set out against him, now that Giannis has overcome one major obstacle, it's likely he will follow suit by overcoming many more in the future, and be able to do it in a much quicker time frame than over the 3-season span it took him to develop his new impressive weapon. As Giannis said himself, it's a compliment that there's got to be 3 people in front stopping me from getting in the paint and building that wall. I'm not gonna lie, I hate it, but at the end of the day you have to figure out a way to play through it. And with an incredible 50 points in Game 6 of the finals, which ultimately clinched the championship and landed Giannis the finals MVP, it looks like he's completed the task. Comment below to let us know your thoughts, and be sure to subscribe for more. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another one of our videos. We'll see you next time, latest Hoops fans. Until then, keep shooting your shot.
Which is funny that there's a defense out there called the Giannis Wall. It's funny to me, you know. So it's crazy.